Beyond Vietnam, Martin Luther King Jr., Riverside Church, New York City, 4th April 1967. Over the past 2 years, as I have moved to break the betrayal of my own silences and to speak from the burnings of my own heart, as I have called for radical departures from the destruction of Vietnam, many persons questioned me about the wisdom of my path. At the heart of their concerns, this query has often loomed, large and loud. Why are you speaking about the war, Dr. King? Why are you joining the voices of dissent? Peace and civil rights don't mix, they say. Aren't you hurting the cause of your people, they ask? When I hear them, though I often understand the source of their concern, I am nevertheless greatly saddened. For such questions mean that the inquirers have not really known me, my commitment, or my calling. Indeed, their questions suggest they do not know the world in which they live. In the light of such tragic misunderstanding, I deem it of signal importance to state clearly, and I trust concisely, why I believe that the path from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the church in Montgomery, Alabama, where I began my pastorate, leads clearly to this sanctuary today. Since I am a preacher by calling, I suppose it is not surprising that I have several major reasons for bringing Vietnam into the field of my moral vision. There is at the outset a very obvious and almost facile connection between the war in Vietnam and the struggle I and others have been waging in America. A few years ago, there was a shining moment in that struggle. It seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. There were experiments, hopes, new beginnings. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched this program broken and eviscerated as if it were some idle political thing on a society gone mad on war. And I know that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw man and skills and money like some demonic, destructive suction tube. So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and to attack it as such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and to die in extraordinarily high proportions relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young man who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia or in East Harlem. So we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schools. So we watch them, in brutal solidarity, burning the huts of a poor village, but we realize that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago. I could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. My third reason moves to an even deeper level of awareness, for it grows out of my experience in the ghettos of the North over the last 3 years. Especially the last 3 summers. As I have walked among the desperate, rejected and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through non-violent action. But they asked, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They asked if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent. For those who ask the question, aren't you a civil rights leader, and thereby mean to exclude me from the movement for peace? I have this answer. In 1957, when a group of us formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we chose as our motto to save the soul of America. We were convinced that we could not limit our vision to certain rights for black people, but instead affirmed the conviction that America would never be free or saved from itself until the descendants of its slaves were loosed completely from the shackles they still wear. In a way, we were agreeing with Langston Hughes, that black bard from Harlem, who had written earlier, "Oh yes, I see it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." The war in Vietnam is but a symptom of a far deeper malady within the American spirit. And if we ignore this sobering reality, we will find ourselves organizing clergy and laymen concerned committees for the next generation. They will be concerned about Guatemala and Peru. They will be concerned about Thailand and Cambodia. They will be concerned about Mozambique and South Africa. We will be marching for these and a dozen other names and attending rallies without end unless there is a significant and profound change in American life and policy. So such thoughts take us beyond Vietnam, but not beyond our calling as sons of the living God. In 1957, a sensitive American official overseas said that it seemed to him that our nation was on the wrong side of a world revolution. During the past 10 years, we have seen emerge a pattern of suppression which has now justified the presence of US military advisors in Venezuela. This need to maintain social stability for our investments account for the counter-revolutionary action of American forces in Guatemala. It tells why American helicopters are being used against guerrillas in Cambodia and why American napalm and Green Beret forces have already been active against rebels in Peru. It is with such activity that the words of the late John F. Kennedy come back to haunt us. 5 years ago, he said, "Those who make revolution impossible, those who make peaceful revolution impossible, will make violent revolution impossible." Increasingly, by choice or by accident, this is the role our nation has taken. The role of those who make peaceful revolution impossible by refusing to give up the privileges and the pleasures that come from the immense profits of overseas investment. I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we're called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that man and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. With righteous indignation, it will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of the countries and say, this is not just. It will look at our alliance with the landed gentry of South America and say, this is not just. The Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hand on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of people normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields, physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death.
In our refugees' narrative, what remains is our instinct. Do you hear that? Do you hear the alienation in your perception of me? What remains is my instinct.
If We Must Die, Claude McKay, 1919. If we must die, let it not be like hogs hunted and penned in an unglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our cursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us die nobly, that our precious blood may not be shed in vain, that even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe, Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows, deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying but fighting back.
My mother always told me, don't let your values be put in a socially convenient line. So jumping from one thought to the other, I became a proper person with a proper mind. And putting one foot before the other, I entered my own being, not knowing what is ahead of me and therefore not foreseeing the stone you threw at my head, with which you quietly disagreed. It was your world and yours alone, not that of my people's breed. Of course I knew my color. I could see it in my mirror's reflection. I just didn't know that there was, let's call it a connection. A net of values assigned to what you identified as me in the narrow paths designed by a narrow society. And now you stand beside me and tell me we're the same, that there's only the oh so awful system that's to blame. Oh sister and brother, I regret to say that you are wrong, because the moment you spoke of sameness, that sameness, it was gone. So no, I will not forgive you for making me the other. Don't even tell me we need to work together. Please don't bother. Of course, white feminism has a nasty, hurting meaning. I didn't forget that you too are a human being. But it seems to me that there's one big confounding. We won't solve anything with fists risen high, but prejudice still standing. We may be free to dream and wish as we please, but our feet and words are still sticky as cheese. I don't want us to be the same. I don't even want to play that game, the game of us together and them apart, because after all, that's never been a good start. I thought that you'd agree and join me on this journey. I must confess I'm disappointed pretty fairly when you ask for similar grounds of feminism and anti-racism. I do not understand. Is it not the same mechanics that are going hand in hand? And what is this thing you call feminism? I do not understand. Is it not different from country to country, from country to land? Oh, sister and brother, I must tell you, you got me all confused. Because your fight for women's rights got my black skin somehow all bruised. You didn't mean to hurt me. You had your goals to reach. But isn't that the same thing the perpetrators preach? Let me not end this in anger and fear and hate. I merely, truly try to start a new debate. Because sister and brother, I know this to be true. It's not been easy, neither for me nor for you. So let's put away these silly sameness crowns, because it might be one fight for equality, but with two very different nouns.
Audre Lorde, A Litany for Survival, 1978. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edge of decision, crucial and alone for those of us who cannot indulge the passing of dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going in the hours between dawn, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line at the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we're afraid we might never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcome. But when we're silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Wir haben in dieses Gespräch nun einige Stimmen schon eingeflochten und möchten jetzt gerne noch eure Stimmen haben, übersetzt. Wer von euch hat im Januar und Februar Geburtstag? Okay, haltet mal die Hände, behaltet sie mal oben. Nehmen wir den März dazu, April dazu. Okay, ihr seid unsere Herzen. Ja? Gut. Habe ich jetzt den April mitgenommen? Ja? Okay. Wer hat Mai bis August Geburtstag? Okay, ihr seid unsere Füße. Die sind auch wichtig. Ein bisschen negativ konnotiert, aber die sind auch sehr wichtig. Stellt euch das mal vor, ohne Füße. Und alle anderen? Schön, das passt doch. Ihr seid unsere Münder. Die Herzen machen das. Die Füße stampfen. Und die Münder schnippen. Sehr schön. Herzlichen Dank. Ihr kriegt in meinem Text Hinweis darauf, wann ihr beginnen solltet. Henri unterstützt euch auch immer, gibt den Takt vor. Und ihr kriegt auch den Hinweis, wenn ihr stoppen sollt. Habt ihr Lust? Schön. Schlag, mein Herz. Schlag ruhig weiter. Ce n'est pas toi qu'il déteste, ce n'est pas toi qu'il définisse comme étrange, c'est les autres dont il parle, parce qu'ils ne connaissent que nous et les autres. I like you and you're black. That's what they say. I am not racist, but sie haben halt Angst. Haben Angst vor schwarzen Herzen, die schwarzes Blut in schwarzes Fleisch und schwarze Haut pumpen. Keep beating, black heart. Continue à battre, cœur noir. Schreite, mein Fuß. Schreite ruhig weiter. Setz dich vor den anderen. Lass ihn sich vor dich setzen. Carry that black heart around. That black heart of a lioness. A lioness in chains, but still au zoo de la culture. On paye pour te voir, on paye pour ton art, Dienstleistung gegen Bezahlung. This is not what I signed up for, ce n'est pas ce que je voulais. Sprich, mein Mund. Sprich ruhig weiter. Sag ihnen, dass das hier nicht Kunst ist. Sag ihnen, dass das hier Stil ist. Stil is not silent, like style. Stil, ce n'est pas subtil comme Stil. Stil ist Stil mit einer Portion CH, mit einer Portion Schweiz, because Switzerland has it all, the beauty and the ugliness. C'est bizarre, n'est-ce pas? Wie sich die Schweiz den Strahl der Ästhetik zu eigen gemacht hat. Wie sie die Enden zusammenlegt und so tut, als ob Schönes und Hässliches zusammengehören. Psch, mein Mund, schweig. Verliere kein Wort über die Camouflage der Neutralität, die Camouflage des Wegschauens. Psch, mein Fuß, steh still. Verrate nicht, woher du kommst. Verrate nicht, wohin du gehen wolltest. Psch, mein Herz. Schweig und steh still. Lass es bleiben. Gib doch endlich auf.
James Baldwin, Stranger in the Village, 1953. From all available evidence, no black man had ever set foot in this tiny Swiss village before I came. I was told before arriving that I would probably be a sight for the village. I took this to mean that people of my complexion were rarely seen in Switzerland, and also that city people are always something of a sight outside the city. It did not occur to me, possibly because I am an American, that there could be people anywhere who had never seen a Negro. It is a fact that cannot be explained on the basis of the inaccessibility of the village. The village is very high, but it is only 4 hours from Milan and 3 hours from Lausanne. It is true that it is virtually unknown. Few people making plans for a holiday would elect to come here. On the other hand, the villagers are able, presumably, to come and go as they please, which they do, to another town at the foot of the mountain. With a population of approximately 5,000, the nearest place to see with a movie or go to the bank. In the village, there is no movie house, no bank, no library, no theater. Very few radios, 1 jeep, 1 station wagon, and at the moment, 1 typewriter, mine. An invention which the woman next door to me here had never seen. There are about 600 people living here, all Catholic. I conclude this from the fact that the Catholic Church is open all year round, whereas the Protestant chapel, set off on a hill a little removed from the village, is open only in the summertime, when the tourists arrive. There are 4 or 5 hotels, all closed now, and 4 or 5 bistros, of which, however, only 2 do any business during the winter. These 2 do not do a great deal, for life in the village seems to end around 9 or 10 o'clock. There are a few stores, butcher, baker, épicerie, a hardware store, and a money changer, who cannot change travelers' checks, but must send them down to the bank, an operation which takes 2 to 3 days. There is something called a ballet house, closed in the winter and used for God knows what, certainly not ballet, during the summer. There seems to be only 1 schoolhouse in the village, and this for the quite young children. I suppose this to mean that their older brothers and sisters at some point descend from these mountains in order to complete their education, possibly again to the town just below. The landscape is absolutely forbidding. Mountains towering on all 4 sides, ice and snow as far as the eye can reach. In this white wilderness, men and women and children move all day, carrying washing, wood, buckets of milk or water, sometimes skiing on Sunday afternoons. All week long, boys and young men are to be seen shoveling snow off the rooftop or dragging wood down from the forest in sledge. The village's only real attraction, which explains the tourist season, is the hot spring water. A disquietingly high proportion of these tourists are cripples or semi-cripples who come year after year from other parts of Switzerland usually to take the waters. This land, the village, at the height of the season, a rather terrifying air of sanctity. as though it were a lesser Lourdes. There is often something beautiful, there is always something awful in the spectacle of a person who has lost one of his faculties, a faculty he never questioned until it was gone and who struggles to recover it. Yet people remain people, on crutches or indeed on deathbeds. And wherever I passed, the first summer I was here among the native villagers or among the lame, a wind passed with me of astonishment, curiosity, amusement, and outrage. That first summer, I stayed 2 weeks and never intended to return. But I did return in the winter to work. The village offers obviously no distraction whatever and has a further advantage of being extremely cheap. Now it is winter again, a year later, and I'm here again. Everyone in the village knows my name, though they scarcely ever use it. Knows that I come from America, though. This, apparently, they will never really believe. Black men come from Africa, and everyone knows that I am the friend of the son of a woman who was born here and that I am staying in their chalet. But I remain as much of a stranger today as I was the first day I arrived, and the children shout, "Nigger, nigger," as I walk along the streets. It must be admitted that in the beginning I was far too shocked to have any real reaction. Insofar as I reacted at all, I reacted by trying to be pleasant, it being a great part of the American Negro's education, long before he goes to school, that he must make people like him. The smile and the world smiles with you routine worked about as well in this situation as it had in the situation for which it was designed, which is to a phenomenon which allowed them to see my teeth. They did not really see my smile, and I began to think that should I take to snarling, no one would notice any difference. All of the physical characteristics of the Negro which had caused me in America a very different and almost forgotten pain were nothing less than miraculous or infernal in the eyes of the village people. Some thought my hair was the color of tar, that it had the texture of wire or the texture of cotton. It was jocularly suggested that I might let it grow long and make myself a winter coat. If I sat in the sun for more than 5 minutes, some daring creature was certain to come along and gingerly put his finger on my hair as though he were afraid of an electric shock, and put his hand on my hand, astonished that the color did not rub off. In all this, in which it must be conceded, there was the charm of genuine wonder, and in which there was certainly no element of intentional unkindness. There was yet no suggestion that I was human. I was simply a living wonder. I knew that they did not mean to be unkind, and I know it now. It is necessary, nevertheless, for me to repeat this to myself each time that I walk out of the chalet. The children who shout "nigger" have no way of knowing the echoes this sound raises in me. They are brimming with good humor, and the more dwelling swell with pride when I stop to speak with them. Just the same, there are days when I cannot pause and smile, when I have no heart to play with them, when indeed I mutter sourly to myself, exactly as I muttered on the streets of a city these children have never seen, when I was no bigger than these now. Your mother was a nigger. James Joyce is right about history being a nightmare, but it may be the nightmare from which no one can awaken. People are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them. For the history of the American Negro is unique in this, that the question of his humanity and of his rights, therefore, as a human being became a burning one for several generations of Americans, so burning a question that it ultimately became one of those used to divide the nation. It is out of this argument that the venom of the epithet nigger is derived. It is an argument which Europe has never heard. And hence, Europe quite sincerely fails to understand how or why the argument arose in the first place, why its effects are frequently disastrous and always so unpredictable, why it refuses until today to be entirely settled. Europe's black possessions remain and do remain in Europe's colonies, at which remove they represented no threat whatsoever to European identity. If they posed any problem at all for the European conscience, it was a problem which remained comfortably abstract. In effect, the black man, as a man, did not exist in Europe. The ideas on which American beliefs are based are not, though Americans often seem to think so, ideas which originated in America. They came out of Europe. And the establishment of democracy on the American continent was scarcely as radical a break with the past as was the necessity which Americans faced of broadening this concept of democracy to include black men. This was literally a hard necessity. It was impossible, for one thing, for Americans to abandon their beliefs, not only because these beliefs alone seemed able to justify the sacrifices they had endured and the blood they had spilled, but also because these beliefs afforded them their only bulwark against a moral chaos, as absolute as the physical chaos of the continent it was their destiny to conquer. But in the situation in which Americans found themselves, these beliefs threatened an idea which, whether or not one likes to think so, is the very warp and woof of the heritage of the West, the idea of white supremacy. The idea of white supremacy rests simply on the fact that the white men are the creators of civilization, the present civilization, which is the only one that matters. All previous civilizations are only contributions to our own, and are therefore civilization's guardians and defenders. Thus, it was impossible for Americans to accept that black man, the black man as one of themselves, for to do so was to jeopardize their status as white man. But not so to accept him was to deny his human reality, his human weight and complexity, and the strain of denying the overwhelmingly undeniable forced Americans into rationalizations so fantastic that they approached the pathological. At the root of the American Negro problem is the necessity of the American white man to find a way of living with the Negro in order to be able to live with himself. And the history of this problem can be reduced to the means used by Americans: lynch law, segregation and legal acceptance, terrorization and concession, either to come to terms with this necessity or to find a way around it, or most usually to find a way of doing both these things at once. The resulting spectacle, at once foolish and dreadful, led someone to make the quite accurate observation that the Negro in America is a form of insanity which overtakes white men. The time has come to realize that the interracial drama acted out on the American continent has not only created a new black man, it has created a new white man too. No road whatever will lead Americans back to the simplicity of this European village where white men still have the luxury of looking on me as a stranger. I am not really a stranger any longer for any American alive. One of the things that distinguishes Americans from other people is that no other people has ever been so deeply involved in the lives of black men and vice versa. This fact, faced with all of its implications, it can be seen that the history of the American Negro problem is not merely shameful. It is also something of an achievement. For even when the worst has been said, it must also be added that the perpetual challenge posed by this problem was always somehow perpetually met. It is precisely this black-white experience which may prove of indispensable value to us in the world we face today. The world is white no longer, and it will never be white again.
Zijn we fit? Zijn we paraat? Oder müssen wir zuerst noch ankommen? Ankommen im Raum und in der Zeit. Ankommen im Schaum und im Spit, wo der Schweiz vom rechten Maulecken tropft. Die Schweiz hat den Schaum schon lange nicht mehr nur auf dem Henri-Michel. Sie hat ihn auch vor dem Mauer, weil die Schweiz ist wütig auf die Jungen mit ihren tief sitzenden Hosen, wütig auf die Jungen mit ihrer schlimmen Sprache. Wütig aber auch auf die Alten mit ihren hoch sitzenden Ansprüchen, wütig auf die Alten mit ihrem immer noch älter werden, wütig auch auf die in der Mitte mit ihren mittelmäßigen AHV-Zahlungen, wütig auf die in der Mitte mit ihrem Vergessen von Schweizer Tradition und darum, schon klar, eben auch wütig aufs Ausland. Weil das Ausland ja eigentlich an all dem geschuldet ist. Ja, die Schweiz ist wütig, aber schon easy. Es geht nicht mehr lange und dann bin ich wieder leise, weil auch wenn ich 1989 mit dem Flugzeug von Somalia hier angekommen bin, weiss ich, dass ich nicht hier angekommen bin. Einmal nicht so angekommen, wie man das meint, wenn man sagt, hey, mach es dir zuerst mal gemütlich. Komm mal an und dann schauen wir dann weiter. Die Schweiz ist nicht gemütlich. Die Schweiz will dann nicht gerne ankommen. Die Schweiz will auch nicht weiter, sondern zurück. Ganz traurig. Erinnert sie sich an die Zeiten, wo es noch gut war, wo es noch einfach war. Schwarz ist schlecht, Weiss ist gut, dazwischen ist nichts. Die Schweiz ist die Schweiz halt. Und die Schweiz gehört den Schweizer, ein bisschen auch den Schweizerinnen, aber nur wenn es darum geht, sich von den vermeintlich anderen abzugrenzen. Und die vermeintlich anderen werden immer mehr. Kann ja für jede fremde Fötzin und jede fremde Fötzin, die in der Schweiz geboren ist, die schon Großeltern hier gelebt haben, sich ein leichter einbürgern lassen. Aber Schweizer sein und Schweizerin sein, muss man sich verdienen. Es reicht nicht, dass man hier geboren ist, hier in der Schule ist, hier aufgewachsen ist. Was wäre denn da für eine Regel? Eine gute. Denken ihr jetzt vielleicht, aber da gäbe es ja gar keinen Unterschied mehr zwischen Bio-Schweizer und Ausländern. Nein, komm, da gehört mehr dazu als so ein bisschen Sozialisierung. Da heisst es anpassen, sich einfügen, sich zwängen in den kleinen Raum, den es eigentlich gar nicht gibt. Weil die Schweiz ist voll. Du siehst ja schon am Stadthof, du kommst ja gar nicht mit des 12, weil es aber überall so viele Leute hat. Und die Leute sind entweder Junge mit tief sitzenden Hosen und schlimmer Sprache oder Alte mit hoch sitzenden Ansprüchen und immer noch älter werden, die in der Mitte mit mittelmäßigen Anfahrtszahlen und vergessen für die Literatur oder die aus dem Ausland. Einmal sind es immer andere, die dort auf diesen Sitzen hocken. Nie ist man selber, der Platz bekommt, der Platz wegnimmt. Und wenn du kommst aus dem Ausland in die Schweiz, dann musst du halt schauen, wo du hinpasst. Ist da noch frei? Nein! Ist es eben nicht. Die Schweiz gehört der Schweizer, manchmal auch der Schweizerin, aber auch nicht den anderen, aber du bist halt da. Wenn es dort nicht mehr gegangen ist, weil die Schweiz aus der Ferne angenehm ausgesehen hat und dann bist du halt da. Mit deinem ausländischen Gesicht, deinem ausländischen Namen, deinen ausländischen Genen. Und dann streckt dir jemand ein hygienisch weisses Frottetüchchen hin. Da, kannst du da nehmen. Da will ich lieber nicht, willst du sagen. Willst du aber auch nicht unfreundlich sein. Willst du auch nicht erklären müssen, warum du das jetzt lieber nicht willst. Das hygienisch weisse Frottetüchchen, das ja nur gut gemeint ist. Willst du nicht erklären, dass sich so ein hygienisch weisses Frottetüchchen mit deiner Haut einfach nicht so gut verträgt, weil der Mensch, egal woher er kommt, pro Minute mehrere tausend Hautschuppen verliert und pro Tag mehrere Gramm. Und wenn man sich das ein bisschen überlegt, ist es eigentlich grusig. Und dunkle Hautschuppen sieht man halt und helle halt einfach nicht. Und dann sagst du, danke vielmals. Nimmst das hygienisch-Schweizer Rottentüchli, kratzt dir während dem Duschen mit den Fingernägeln möglichst viel von diesen Hautschuppen weg. Vielleicht erwischst du auch noch ein paar von diesen Pigmenten, die dieser Schweizer so Angst machen. Vielleicht wirst du, wenn du es ganz gut machst, noch ein bisschen heller, noch ein bisschen angenehmer für die Schweiz. Und nach dem Duschen brauchst du das hygienisch-Schweizer Rottentüchli eigentlich gar nicht wirklich. Du bist nur ganz säuferlich über deine Haut, so ein zum Schein. Ja, keine Spuren hinterlassen auf dem hygienisch-Schweizer Rottentüchli. Ja, nicht an Dreck erinnern, so sagt man dir ja auch. Dreck für gewisse bist eben wirklich nur da. Dreck, ein Fleck auf dem hygienisch-schweizer Rottentüchli von dieser Schweiz. Mein Name ist Amina Abdulkadir und ich bin ein brauner Fleck auf der hygienisch-weißen Weste von dieser Schweiz. Von dieser Schweiz, die ihren weissen Dreck als Speuz auf meiner hygienisch braunen Haut hinterlässt und das nach wie vor. Dreck ist Ansichtssache, Migration nicht, Menschenrecht auch nicht und das auch nicht. Man ist, wer man ist und nicht, wer die anderen sagen, man sei.
James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time, 1963. The American Negro has the great advantage of having never believed that collection of myths to which white Americans cling, that their ancestors were all freedom-loving heroes, that they were born in the greatest country the world has ever seen, or that Americans are invincible in battle and wise in peace, that Americans have always dealt honorably with Mexicans and Indians, and all other neighbors or inferiors, that American men are the world's most direct and virile, that American women are pure. Negroes know far more about white Americans than that. Can almost be said, in fact, that they know about white Americans what parents, or anyway mothers, know about their children. And that they very often regard white Americans that way. And perhaps this attitude, held in spite of what they know and have endured, helps to explain why Negroes on the whole and until lately have allowed themselves to feel so little hatred. The tendency has really been, insofar as this was possible, to dismiss white people as the slightly mad victims of their own brainwashing. One watched the lives they led. One could not be fooled about that. One watched the things they did and the excuses that they gave themselves. And if a white man was really in trouble, deep trouble, it was to the Negro's door that he came. And one felt that if one had had the white man's worldly advantages, one would never have become as bewildered and as joyless and as thoughtlessly cruel as he. The Negro came to the white man for a roof or for $5 or for a letter to the judge. The white man came to the Negro for love. But he was not often able to give what he came seeking. The price was too high. He had too much to lose. And the Negro knew this too. When one knows this about a man, it is impossible for one to hate him, but unless he becomes a man, becomes equal, it is also impossible for one to love him. Ultimately, one tends to avoid him, for the universal characteristic of children is to assume that they have a monopoly on trouble, and therefore a monopoly on you. Ask any Negro what he knows about the white people with whom he works. Then ask the white people with whom he works what they know about him. How can the American Negro past be used? It is entirely possible that this dishonored past will rise up soon to smite us all. There are some wars, for example, if anyone on the globe is still mad enough to go to war, that the American Negro will not support. However, many of his people may be coerced, and there is a limit to the number of people any government can put in prison, and a rigid limit indeed to the practicality of such a course. A bill is coming in that I fear America is not prepared to pay. The problem of the 20th century, wrote W.E.B. Du Bois around 60 years ago, is the problem of the color line. A fearful and delicate problem which compromises when it does not corrupt all the American efforts to build a better world here, there, or anywhere. It is for this reason that everything white Americans think they believe in must now be re-examined. What one would not like to see again is the consolidation of peoples on the basis of their color. But as long as we in the West place on color the value that we do, we make it impossible for the great unwashed to consolidate themselves according to any other principle. Color is not a human or a personal reality. It is a political reality. But this is a distinction so extremely hard to make that the West has not been able to make it yet. And at the center of this dreadful storm, this vast confusion, stand the black people of this nation, who must now share the fate of a nation that has never accepted them, to which they were brought in chains. Well, if this is so, one has no choice to do all in one's power to change that fate, and at no matter what risk, eviction, imprisonment, torture, death. For the sake of one's children, in order to minimize the bill that they must pay, one must be careful not to take refuge in any delusion, and the value placed on the color of the skin is always and everywhere and forever a delusion. I know that what I am asking is impossible, but in our time, as in every time, the impossible is the least that one can demand. And one is, after all, emboldened by the spectacle of human history in general, and American Negro history in particular, for it testifies to nothing less than the perpetual achievement of the impossible.
North Carolina, 1955, Pupil Assignment Act. Eltern, deren hellhäutige Kinder in gemischte Schulen gehen, erhalten eine Entschädigung. North Carolina, 1956, Pearsall Plan. Die Entschädigung an Eltern hellhäutiger Kinder für den Besuch einer gemischten Schule fällt weg. Dafür können hellhäutige Schülerinnen und Schüler eine Finanzierung für den Besuch einer privaten weißen Schule beantragen. Werden sie nicht aufgenommen und in eine gemischte Schule eingeteilt, müssen sie die Schule nicht besuchen. Auch dunkelhäutige Kinder dürfen einen Antrag stellen, eine weiße Schule zu besuchen. Über die Annahme oder Ablehnung dieses Antrags entscheidet dasselbe hellhäutige Komitee wie bei Anträgen hellhäutiger Kinder. North Carolina, 1957. Von den 40 Schülern und Schülerinnen, die einen solchen Antrag gestellt haben, wird 4, also einem Zehntel, der Besuch einer weißen Schule gestattet. Harry Harding High School, Charlotte, North Carolina, 4. September 1957. Dorothy Counts, 15 Jahre alt, verlässt an ihrem ersten Schultag an einer weißen Schule den Schutz des Elternautos, weil vor der Schule eine Versammlung stattfindet. Die Lokalpresse dokumentiert die Grimassen und Handzeichen hinter Dorothys Kopf, die Spucke auf ihrem Kleid und die Steine und Stöcke, die ihr vor die Füße geworfen werden. Wenig später gewinnt der Fotograf, nicht Danny Lyon. Wenig später gewinnt der Fotograf den Wettbewerb World Press Photo of the Year. Harry Harding High School, Charlotte, North Carolina, 7. September 1957. Dorothy Counts, 4 Tage später logischerweise immer noch 15 Jahre alt, wird auf Anraten der Polizei aus der Schule geholt. Man könne nicht für ihre Sicherheit garantieren. Die Eltern ziehen mit Dorothy nach Pennsylvania. Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, 1981, fast ein Vierteljahrhundert später. Thomas J. Pearsall plagen auf dem Sterbebett Zweifel am nach ihm benannten Pearsall-Plan. Harry Harding High School, Charlotte, North Carolina, 2008. Dorothy Counts erhält 51 Jahre nach ihren 4 Tagen an der High School ein Ehrendiplom. Harry Harding High School, Charlotte, North Carolina, 2010. Die Bibliothek der High School wird nach Dorothy Counts benannt und eine der Personen aus dem Mob entschuldigt sich öffentlich bei der zu diesem Zeitpunkt 68-jährigen Frau. Er wird dadurch deshalb, genau wie Thomas J. Pearsall, für seinen Mut heute noch gefeiert. Herzlichen Dank.